Would you bet $100 that a skinny, pacifist country boy wouldn't have the courage to crush a fly? That's exactly what a World War I veteran did, and lost, because 60 days later, that same boy, frail, soft-spoken, carrying a Bible in his pocket, and afraid to even raise his voice, would become the nightmare of the Nazi war machine. In just 2 months, he would eliminate 707 German soldiers with almost supernatural precision. But how? How did the boy who couldn't bear to see suffering transform into a silent, methodical, and unbeatable killing machine? This is the story of the soldier nobody took seriously, until it was too late. Do you think killing is a matter of strength, or something much darker? Allendale, Tennessee, 1943. Dawn broke over the Boone family farm, casting long shadows across the weathered barn where 19-year-old Elijah Boone knelt in prayer. His slender fingers traced the worn leather cover of his pocket Bible, a gift from his mother on his 13th birthday. Through the small window, golden light illuminated his gaunt face, highlighting cheekbones sharpened by years of Depression-era meals. "Elijah, breakfast!" his mother's voice carried from the farmhouse. He tucked the Bible into his shirt pocket, right over his heart, and stood. Today was the day. The recruitment office in town would be open, and despite his father's protests, Elijah had made up his mind. The war wouldn't wait for the harvest. At the kitchen table, his father didn't look up from his coffee. "You're making a mistake, son. Your place is here." Elijah pushed scrambled eggs around his plate. "Every man has to do his part, Pa. How you can't even kill the rabbits that eat our vegetables," his father said, voice low but cutting. "What makes you think you can kill a man?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. 2 days later, Elijah boarded a rattling bus bound for Fort Benning, Georgia. His possessions fit into one canvas bag, 3 changes of clothes, a toothbrush, and his Bible. The recruiter had raised an eyebrow at his lanky frame, but stamped his papers anyway. The army needed bodies, even skinny ones. Fort Benning greeted Elijah with a blast of humid Georgia heat and the barking voices of drill sergeants. By sunset, his hair was shorn, his civilian clothes exchanged for an ill-fitting uniform, and his quiet country life replaced by the controlled chaos of basic training. "Name," barked the processing sergeant. "Elijah Boone, sir." "You look like you'd blow away in a stiff wind, Boone. You sure you're in the right place?" The barracks offered no sanctuary. 30 beds lined up in perfect rows, filled with young men from across America. Most were louder, bigger, and bolder than Elijah. "Hey, Bible boy!" A stocky recruit from Boston pointed at the book peeking from Elijah's pocket. "You planning to pray the Nazis to death?" Laughter rippled through the barracks. Elijah tucked the Bible deeper into his pocket and climbed onto his bunk, turning his face to the wall. Morning brought the first day of training, and with it, the first signs of trouble. During marksmanship practice, Elijah hesitated before each shot, his finger trembling on the trigger. His targets returned mostly unmarked. "Boone, what in God's name was that?" Sergeant Fletcher shouted. "My grandmother could shoot better with her eyes closed." Later that week, during bayonet practice, Elijah turned pale at the instructor's descriptions of close combat. When ordered to charge the dummy targets with a training bayonet, he moved forward mechanically, his thrust lacking any conviction. "It's a dummy, Boone, not your sweetheart," the instructor bellowed. "Put your shoulder into it." Behind him, someone muttered, "Bet he's a vegetarian or just plain yellow." The worst moment came during a live fire exercise. The crack of rifles and the smell of cordite overwhelmed Elijah. He dropped to his knees, shaking, unable to raise his weapon. The training sergeant pulled him aside as the other recruits continued firing. "Son, are you sure you're cut out for this?" the sergeant asked, genuine concern replacing his usual harshness. That night, word spread through the barracks about Elijah's breakdown. As he entered, conversation died, replaced by meaningful glances and poorly concealed smirks. Sergeant Riley, a weathered veteran of the Great War with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and a collection of scars, approached Elijah's bunk. Riley had transferred to training duty after taking shrapnel in his knee at Belleau Wood in 1918. "Heard you had some trouble today, farm boy," Riley said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'll do better tomorrow, sir," Elijah replied, eyes fixed on his Bible. Riley pulled out his wallet and removed a crisp $100 bill. "I'll bet you this C-note you won't last 10 minutes in actual combat. Hell, I don't think you'd even kill a fly." The barracks erupted in laughter. Someone called out, "That's easy money, Sarge." Elijah closed his Bible slowly, his face unreadable. The base commander was already considering his discharge papers for emotional unsuitability for combat service. That night, while the others slept, Elijah knelt beside his bunk in prayer, whispering words only he could hear. Something changed in his expression as he rose, a hardness settling behind his gentle eyes. Before dawn, he sought out Sergeant Riley on the smoking porch of the NCO quarters. "I accept your bet," Elijah said quietly. "Give me 60 days overseas. You'll be eating that $100 bill." Riley laughed. "You got spirit after all, Bible boy. Too bad spirit doesn't stop bullets." 2 weeks later, despite recommendations for his discharge, Elijah Boone found himself on a transport ship bound for England. From there, he would join the Allied forces pushing through the frozen forests of Belgium, where German divisions waited and where a quiet transformation would begin. The bitter December wind cut through the Ardennes forest like shards of ice. Elijah's platoon moved in a tight formation, their boots crunching against the frozen ground. They were part of the 101st Airborne Division, sent to reinforce the Allied front line near Bastogne, Belgium. "Keep it tight, men," Lieutenant Sanders whispered, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "Intelligence reports indicate German patrols in the area." Elijah walked silently, his rifle clutched close to his chest. 3 weeks in Europe had done little to change the perception others had of him. The nickname Bible Boy had followed him across the Atlantic. "Hey, Boone!" Private Miller jabbed him with an elbow. "You still say your prayers every night? Might want to say an extra one today?" Elijah didn't respond. His eyes scanned the tree line methodically, a habit he'd developed since arriving in Belgium. The forest seemed too quiet. No birds, no small animals, just the hushed sound of men trying to move silently through snow. The ambush came without warning. A hail of machine gun fire erupted from 3 directions. Men dropped instantly. Screams filled the air. Lieutenant Sanders fell before he could give orders. Chaos consumed the platoon. "Take cover!" someone yelled. Elijah found himself thrown to the ground, partially pinned beneath the motionless body of Private Miller. Blood seeped into the snow. Surrounded by the fallen, Elijah remained perfectly still, his cheek pressed against the frozen earth. From this position, unable to move, he watched. His eyes, once full of fear, now observed with calculating precision. He memorized the positions of the German machine gun nests. He counted the soldiers. He noted their patrol patterns. He studied their faces, their mannerisms, their weapons. Hours passed. The Germans secured the area, collecting weapons from the fallen Americans. They set up a temporary camp nearby, confident they had eliminated the entire patrol. Darkness fell over the forest. The temperature dropped well below freezing. Elijah remained motionless until the German sentries changed shifts. Then, with glacial slowness, he extracted himself from beneath Miller's body. He moved through the shadows like a ghost, his white winter gear blending with the snow. The training that had seemed so difficult at Fort Benning now flowed through him with instinctive grace. The first German sentry never heard him approach. The second never had time to sound an alarm. The third was neutralizing a communications radio when Elijah appeared as if from nowhere. Within minutes, Elijah had secured the German field radio. He slipped away into the forest, navigating by stars through enemy territory. By dawn, he had reached an American forward position, the radio tucked under his arm. Major David Halpin was reviewing maps when a sentry brought Elijah to his command tent. "Sir, this private says he has urgent intelligence," the sentry reported. Halpin looked up. "Private?" "Boone, sir. Elijah Boone. My platoon was ambushed near these coordinates." Elijah placed a finger on the map with surprising precision. "The Germans have established a forward operating base here. 3 machine gun nests positioned here, here, and here, approximately 40 men. They're planning to move at dawn tomorrow." Halpin studied the young man's face. "How did you acquire this intelligence, Private?" "I observed, sir." The major's eyes narrowed. "And you escaped alone?" "Yes, sir." "Can you operate that radio?" Elijah nodded. "Show me." Within the hour, Allied aircraft screamed over the Ardennes, delivering precise strikes on the German position. Major Halpin watched Elijah throughout the operation, noting the calm efficiency with which the young soldier relayed coordinates. "Boone," Halpin said when it was over, "I want you assigned to my command unit, effective immediately." Word spread quickly through the ranks. The quiet boy who once trembled at the sound of gunfire had single-handedly provided intelligence that saved an entire company from ambush. Major Halpern began sending Elijah on specialized reconnaissance missions. Each night, Elijah would disappear into enemy territory. Each morning, he would return with invaluable intelligence, never excited, never boastful. His reports were delivered in the same soft voice he used for prayers. After 10 days, the Military Intelligence Office confirmed 57 enemy positions neutralized based on Elijah's information. He operated alone, preferring the solitude of night missions to the company of other soldiers. "What's your secret, Boone?" Captain Reynolds asked one evening. Elijah looked up from his Bible. "Patience, sir, and faith." The men in the company began to notice Elijah's ritual before each mission. He would read from the Psalms, his lips moving silently over ancient words of vengeance and justice. Then he would take a white handkerchief, soak it in lamp oil, and tuck it into his pocket. "Why do you do that?" a replacement soldier asked him once. "Oil-dampened sound," was all Elijah replied. The soldiers started calling him the pastor of death behind his back, but never to his face. There was something in Elijah's eyes now, a distant, hollow look that made men uncomfortable. German intelligence reports began to mention a phantom operating in the Ardennes, an American who moved without sound, who appeared and disappeared like mist. Field commanders reported unusual casualties with no explanation. Soldiers whispered about a ghost who hunted in the darkness. "The men are getting superstitious," a German colonel wrote in his report. "They claim someone is watching them through the trees, someone with inhuman precision." Major Halpern called Elijah to his tent after the 20th successful mission. "The Germans have changed their patrol patterns," Halpern said. "They're becoming more cautious, almost as if they're afraid of something." Elijah nodded once. "They should be, sir." Halpern studied the young man before him. The transformation so complete it was hard to believe this was the same trembling recruit from Tennessee. "Boone," he said finally, "what happened to you?" Elijah's hand rested on his Bible. "I found my purpose, sir. Every man has one." That night, Elijah disappeared into the forest once again, and somewhere in the darkness, German soldiers huddled closer to their fires, watching the tree line with anxious eyes. January 1944. The Allied command post buzzed with activity as Colonel Warren Richards paced before a large tactical map of the Ardennes region. Colored pins marked known enemy positions, supply lines, and strategic objectives. Standing at attention before the colonel was Private Elijah Boone, his uniform impeccable despite weeks in the field. "Private Boone," Colonel Richards began, "your record these past 3 weeks has been extraordinary. Major Halpern speaks highly of your reconnaissance work." "Thank you, sir. I'm offering you a field promotion to sergeant, your own squad, 10 good men under your command." Elijah's expression remained unchanged. "With all due respect, sir, I work better alone." The colonel's eyebrows rose. "This is a considerable opportunity, Private. Most men would jump at it." "I'm not most men, sir." A week later, Elijah found himself transferred to a specialized unit within the 82nd Airborne Division. Captain Lewis Miller, a wiry veteran with tired eyes, briefed him in a tent illuminated by a single lamp. "Our intelligence indicates 3 critical targets behind enemy lines," Miller explained, pointing to marks on a tattered map. "A railway bridge here, a communications center here, and a fuel depot here. Conventional forces can't reach them. We need someone who can move undetected." Elijah studied the map silently. "Major Halpern says you're that someone," Miller continued. "Says you're a ghost in the forest. When do I leave, sir?" "Tonight. Pick your equipment, whatever you need." In the armory tent, Elijah selected his tools with methodical care. A combat knife with a blackened blade, a modified M1 Garand with custom sights, 3 grenades, wire for traps, a canteen filled with water, his Bible. The quartermaster watched him curiously. "That's all you're taking?" "Most fellows load up like they're never coming back." "Weight slows you down," Elijah replied. "Noise gets you killed." Over the following weeks, Elijah refined his approach to combat. He documented his methods in a small notebook, developing what he called his 3-step doctrine. Patience, precision, disappearance. Patience means waiting for the perfect moment, he wrote. Hours if necessary. Cold and discomfort are temporary. Mistakes are permanent. Precision means one action, one result. No wasted motion, no wasted ammunition. Disappearance means becoming part of the landscape. Never staying in one place, always moving, always watching. Elijah learned to use the environment as a weapon. He studied the patterns of snowfall on branches, how to move without disturbing them. He discovered that throwing a stone could distract a sentry long enough. He found that wind direction could mask sounds or carry them. The forest became his ally. Reports of successful operations flowed back to headquarters. Bridge supports mysteriously collapsed. Communication lines went dead. Supply depots reported unexplained fires. The German command structure became increasingly paranoid about Allied infiltrators. On a particularly cold February night, Elijah returned to base after neutralizing an enemy patrol that had surrounded a pinned-down American unit. Captain Miller met him at the perimeter. 21 hostiles neutralized in 40 minutes, Miller said, reading from a field report, with 27 rounds expended. He looked up. How is that even possible? Elijah cleaned his rifle methodically. Efficiency, sir. The next morning, a brigadier general visited the forward operating base. He requested a private meeting with the soldier they now called the Pastor of Death throughout the division. General Harrington was a career military man with a chest full of medals from 2 world wars. He studied Elijah with shrewd eyes. Son, I've read every report, seen the results. What I want to know is, do you enjoy it? The killing? Elijah met the general's gaze steadily. No, sir. But I know that for every enemy I remove, dozens of our men live another day. The general nodded slowly. Carry on then. Across the front, German soldiers began sharing stories about an American specter with supernatural abilities. They claimed he could see in perfect darkness, that bullets passed through him, that he knew their positions before they arrived. Some refused night patrols entirely. An intercepted German intelligence report revealed a bounty of 10,000 Reichsmarks for the capture or proof of death of the American known as Der Geist von Ardennen, the Ghost of the Ardennes. A German prisoner, when interrogated, shook visibly at the mention of American night operations. It's him, the prisoner whispered. The one with eyes of glass and a soul of ice. He watches from the trees. Captain Miller showed Elijah the translated report. Congratulations, you're famous in Berlin. Elijah didn't smile. Fame makes you a target. Intelligence officers reported that Hitler himself had mentioned the Ghost of Ardennes in a staff meeting, demanding explanations for how one American soldier could cause such disruption. In late February, as the Allied forces prepared for a major offensive, a transport truck arrived with reinforcements and supplies. Among them was a familiar face, Sergeant Riley walking with a cane, his left leg stiff from an old wound aggravated by the cold. Riley spotted Elijah cleaning his rifle outside a tent. For a moment, he didn't recognize the hollow-eyed soldier as the Bible-quoting farm boy from basic training. Boone? Elijah Boone? Elijah looked up, his movements economical, his eyes evaluating the sergeant in an instant. Sergeant Riley. Riley approached, taking in the specialized equipment, the tactical maps, the deference other soldiers showed as they passed. I heard stories all the way from England, Riley said. Some American ghost haunting the Germans. Never thought it would be you. Elijah returned to cleaning his rifle, each motion precise and practiced. Jesus, kid, Riley continued, lowering his voice. They say you've personally accounted for over 400 enemy casualties. Is it true? Elijah assembled the rifle without looking at the parts, his fingers moving with mechanical precision. I don't keep count, he said finally, but his notebook, tucked in his breast pocket next to his Bible, told a different story. Each page contained dates, locations, and tallies. Methodical, exact. The accounting of a man who had transformed himself into something else entirely, a machine. March 1944. The winter's grip on the Ardennes began to loosen, turning packed snow into treacherous mud. Sergeant Riley found Elijah sharpening his knife outside a supply tent, his movements methodical and precise. Got a minute, Boone? Riley asked, leaning heavily on his cane. Elijah didn't look up. Time is the one thing we don't have much of, Sergeant. Riley shifted uncomfortably. Listen, about that bet back at Benning, it was just a joke. I was trying to light a fire under you. The knife stopped moving. Elijah's eyes, now permanently shadowed by something that hadn't been there in Georgia, lifted to meet Riley's. They were just lives too, Sergeant. Just lives. Riley flinched, as if struck. Before he could respond, a runner approached. Private Boone, Colonel Hargrove wants to see you immediately. The command tent buzzed with activity. Maps covered every surface, markers indicating troop movements, supply lines, and strategic targets. Colonel Hargrove, a stern man with silver-streaked hair, dismissed his staff as Elijah entered. "Private Boone," he began, "what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level." Hargrove pointed to a small village on the map, marked Reichenbach. "Intelligence reports confirm that SS Standartenführer Klaus Wagner is hiding here. Wagner is responsible for numerous atrocities against civilians and Allied prisoners. He's also carrying vital intelligence about German defenses along the Siegfried Line." Elijah studied the map silently. "We need him captured alive if possible." The village is heavily guarded. A frontal assault would result in significant casualties and likely Wagner's suicide. We need someone who can infiltrate undetected. "When do I leave?" "Tonight. You'll be dropped 5 miles from the village. Our intelligence officers have prepared a peasant disguise and documentation. The rest is up to you." As darkness fell, Elijah prepared methodically. He memorized the village layout, the guard rotations, the location of Wagner's suspected hideout. He changed into worn civilian clothes, deliberately soiled to match a farm laborer's. An intelligence officer briefed him one final time. "Remember, we need Wagner alive. His knowledge of the Siegfried Line defenses could save thousands of American lives." Elijah nodded once. "I understand the mission parameters." The parachute drop went smoothly under cover of darkness. By dawn, Elijah had cached his military equipment and approached the village with a pronounced limp, pushing a handcart filled with turnips. His papers identified him as Joseph Müller, a local farmer with a medical exemption from military service. The German checkpoint guards barely glanced at his documents, waving him through with disinterest. For the next 3 days, Elijah became Joseph completely, selling vegetables in the marketplace, frequenting the local tavern, establishing a routine that rendered him invisible through familiarity. He observed every detail of village life. Which houses received special deliveries, which had extra guards, which had recently installed radio equipment. At night, he meticulously mapped the village's defensive positions and placed small explosive charges at strategic points. On the 4th night, he marked every house in the village with a small chalk cross, except one. The unmarked house, he had confirmed, contained Wagner and his personal guard. Shortly before midnight, simultaneous explosions disrupted the village's power supply and communications. In the ensuing chaos, Elijah moved with purpose. By dawn, the village was secured by an Allied special operations team that had been waiting nearby. They found Wagner bound and gagged in his own cellar, alive but thoroughly terrified. "How did you manage this?" the team leader asked Elijah. Elijah handed him a sealed envelope. "Ensure this reaches Wagner's superiors in Berlin." Inside was a photograph of Wagner, bound with white cloth and a handwritten note. "The pacifist sends his regards." Official reports would later state that SS Standartenführer Klaus Wagner died attempting escape during transport. The intelligence he provided about German defenses would save countless Allied lives during the final push into Germany. Elijah returned to headquarters 3 days later. He walked directly to Colonel Hargrove's office, stood at attention, and made a single request. "I'd like to request discharge, sir." Hargrove looked up, surprised. "Discharge? Boone, you're one of our most effective operators. The brass is talking about special commendation." 60 days, sir. That was my commitment." The colonel studied Elijah's face. The hollow eyes, the tight jaw, the complete absence of the farm boy who had arrived in Europe 2 months earlier. "I'll process the paperwork," he said finally. A military intelligence officer compiled Elijah's service record. 60 days in the European theater had resulted in 707 confirmed enemy neutralizations. No casualties were accidental. All were precise. All were calculated. Sergeant Riley found Elijah packing his few possessions the next day. "Heard you're heading stateside," Riley said, pulling the worn $100 bill from his pocket. "A bet's a bet. You earned this." Elijah glanced at the money. "Keep it, Sergeant. I've already paid with a different currency." That afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope containing official notification that Elijah had been recommended for the Medal of Honor. Without hesitation, he tore the letter into pieces. "Tell them I don't want to be remembered for this," he told the startled courier. 3 weeks later, Elijah Boone stepped off a transport ship in New York Harbor. His service record had been officially classified, his extraordinary achievements buried in military archives. He boarded a train for Tennessee, still carrying his Bible, still moving with the silent precision he had developed in the forests of Belgium. When he finally reached the family farm, his mother opened the door to find a stranger standing on her porch. For a long moment she stared at him, searching his face for her son. "Elijah," she whispered uncertainly. "Is that you?" But the boy who had left the farm, the gentle soul who couldn't bear to kill rabbits, had disappeared somewhere in the snows of the Ardennes. What returned was someone else entirely. Spring 1945. Victory in Europe had been declared, but for Elijah Boone, peace remained elusive. He purchased a small cabin deep in the Tennessee mountains, far from neighbors, far from questions. The locals quickly learned to leave him alone. "That Boone boy came back different," they whispered in town. "Best to give him his space." The cabin had no electricity, no telephone, just a wood stove, a well for water, and shelves lined with books, mostly history, theology, and philosophy. On the wall hung a single item from the war, a tattered map of the Ardennes forest, its edges yellowed with age. Elijah never touched another weapon, not a hunting rifle, not a fishing knife. He grew vegetables in a small garden and traded with a local store for essentials. He avoided newspapers, radios, anything that might connect him to the world he'd left behind. For 40 years he lived this way. A ghost in the mountains, much as he had been in the forests of Belgium. But once a month, without fail, he walked 5 miles to the post office in town, carrying a stack of letters. "Who's he writing to?" the postmaster once asked Elijah's mother. "He won't say," she replied, her eyes sad. "Some things from the war, I suppose." The letters, dozens each month, reached homes across America. Each envelope contained a handwritten note addressed to the mother of a fallen soldier. Each note included details only someone who had been there could know. A kind word spoken before battle, a photograph shared in a foxhole, a final message never delivered. "Your son John spoke of your apple pie the night before. He said no one made it better. He wasn't afraid. Michael carried your letter close to his heart. He read it each night. He was proud to be your son. David saved 3 men before he fell. They lived because of him. You should know that." Mothers wrote back, desperate to know who this stranger was who had witnessed their son's final moments. The letters were always returned unopened. In 1985, Dr. Thomas Whitaker, a military historian researching forgotten heroes of World War II, discovered classified files about an operative codenamed the Ghost of Ardennes. Intrigued, he petitioned for access to the complete archives. These records indicate this single individual was responsible for operations that saved an estimated 3,000 Allied soldiers, Whitaker noted in his journal. Yet his name appears nowhere in official histories. It's as if someone deliberately erased him. After months of research, cross-referencing unit dispatches and personal accounts, Whitaker pieced together the story of Elijah Boone. Most surprising was the discovery that Boone's name had been removed from official records by his own request. "He didn't want recognition," a retired colonel told Whitaker during an interview. "Said he didn't deserve medals for what he did. Never saw anyone so determined to be forgotten." Whitaker's subsequent book, The Ghost, America's Most Lethal Soldier, became a bestseller. It brought renewed attention to the mysterious figure who had haunted the Ardennes in the winter of 1944. A PBS documentary team tracked down Elijah in 1989. He was 65 then, still living alone, still silent about the war. After weeks of requests, he agreed to appear on camera, but only briefly. The resulting footage showed a lean, weathered man with alert eyes that seemed to notice everything. He spoke only one sentence before ending the interview. "I just wanted to come home whole." The documentary aired nationally, prompting hundreds of letters from veterans who had served in the Ardennes. Many claimed their units had been saved by intelligence provided by the pastor. In 2015, at the age of 91, Elijah Boone died quietly in his sleep. The local doctor who pronounced his death found him with a worn Bible in his hands and a leather-bound notebook beside his bed. The notebook contained 707 pages. Each page had a single name meticulously written. Each name had a date. Each name represented a life ended by Elijah's actions in the Ardennes. Colonel James Harrington, returned himself a decorated veteran, was among the few allowed to view the notebook before it was sealed at Elijah's request. "He eliminated for others to live," Harrington told a local reporter. But in doing so, he lost his own peace. Each name in that book was a weight he carried every day of his life. Following Elijah's instructions, he was buried in an unmarked grave on his mountain property. No military honors, no ceremony, just a simple inscription on a stone marker. Here lies a man who wouldn't kill flies. The story might have ended there, forgotten like so many tales from that terrible war. But in a small museum in Bastogne, Belgium, where the Battle of the Bulge is commemorated, there exists an unofficial memorial. It contains no photographs, no official recognition, just a glass case displaying a Bible with powder marks on its cover, donated anonymously after Elijah's death. Beside it, a simple plaque reads, "To the ghost who walked among us, whose steps saved thousands, the Ardennes remembers." Each year on the anniversary of the Allied victory, local residents place white handkerchiefs around the display, a gesture understood only by those who know the story of the boy who wouldn't kill a fly, who became the specter that haunted the Nazi war machine, and who spent the rest of his life trying to find redemption for what war had made him become.